Karen Frazier was born in December 1965. His father was Catholic and her mother was Protestant. However, Karen did not practice any religion. Karen went to college and was married at the age of 21, but was divorced a few years later. Karen was a musician who played the flute, piano, mandolin, and various percussion instruments. Karen also played golf from a very young age, as she had been taught by her grandfather, who was a professional golfer. Karen worked professionally as a newspaper reporter and freelance writer. For all of her life, Karen Frazier had had recurring dreams about train derailments and claims to have had the dreams since she was about 5 years of age, and they still occur to this day, and she would have about one a year. Many of her dreams have corresponded with actual train derailments, where she will have a dream and within 24 hours a train derailment will appear on the news. Karen also claims to have had the same unusual dream with earthquakes, where she will have a dream about earthquakes and then it will appear on the news within 24 hours, and she had had the strange ability since she was very young. Just like train derailments, she will have 1 or 2 dreams a year. The last earthquake dreams included several major West Coast earthquakes, and one was a Northridge earthquake in Los Angeles in 1994, and the Loma Prieta earthquake in San Francisco in 1989, where fortunately for Karen, she was in San Francisco the day before the earthquake occurred. Another dream was a Nisqually earthquake near Seattle in 2001. Up to this stage, Karen had only had dreams about disasters, but her life would take a strange turn in 2009 after someone told her about the worst avalanche in history that took place in 1910. The disaster took place at Wellington, Washington, in the North Cascade mountain range. 96 people lost their lives when an avalanche swept 2 trains off of a mountain. From the moment that Karen Frazier heard about the Wellington avalanche, she was strangely drawn to it, and her husband claimed that she had become obsessed by it. That obsession led her to write 2 books about the disaster, which she spent hundreds of hours at the location, even though Wellington was 3 hours from where she lived. Other than books, she also spoke about the disaster at conferences, as well as on radio and television. When Karen started to do research about the train disaster in 2009, she was drawn to one particular passenger on the train called Nellie Sharp, who was killed on the train at the age of 26. Karen, along with her friend Elaine Davison, began to do research on Nellie Sharp, which took them 5 years to complete. After researching, Karen found that Nellie Sharp was born in December 1893 in Bloomington, Illinois, and was the youngest of 8 children. Her parents were George and Minnie Sharp. Her father was a railroad engineer who worked in Bloomington and/or Chicago. Her family had moved around a lot and lived in several places, including Missouri, Texas, and Oklahoma. Nellie married a man called John T. McGill at the age of 21, where the couple moved to San Francisco around the time of the devastating earthquake in 1906. Unfortunately, the marriage did not last very long and they separated. Nellie Sharp had had many varied jobs, such as musician, where she played the clarinet, and also worked for a short time as a telephone operator. She was also a writer and wrote for local newspapers and covered major events, such as the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. Nellie also liked to play golf. In February 1910, Nellie and a friend called Mrs. Herbert Tweedy were in Spokane, Washington, to write articles about adventures in the Wild West in a magazine called McClure's. The women drew straws to decide which direction each of them was to go, where sadly for Nellie, she'd drawn the short straw and ended up on the Great Northern Railway's local number 25, which was going to Seattle. When the train was in the North Cascade mountain range in a town called Wellington, the train became stuck in snow for 9 days as snowstorms raged around the train. Then at 1:42 a.m. on March the 1st, 1910, a bolt of lightning struck the hillside above the train that triggered an avalanche. Nellie's train was swept down the mountain and ended up on the banks of the Ty River, where Nellie Sharp was one of 96 fatalities. Some of the survivors described Nellie as outgoing on the train, who hung out with the in crowd, who liked to smoke cigars, laugh and drink. After identifying all of the bodies along with Nellie Sharp's, her next of kin was listed as her ex-husband, John McGurl, and when the insurance company for the railroad paid out money to the victims' families, he took the money but left the body at the Wellington morgue. Nellie's sisters had to come and collect her body, and without the insurance money from the railroad, the family could not afford a decent grave or headstone, so Nellie was buried in an unmarked grave. After reading about the life of Nellie Sharp, Karen could not help but draw amazing similarities between herself and Nellie Sharp, who tragically died in the avalanche in 1910. They both married at the age of 21, when neither marriage lasted for very long. They were both musicians, and both had similar personality traits such as intelligence, exuberant, good humour, and were energetic. They both wrote for newspapers and were writers. Eventually, she was able to find a photograph of Nellie Sharp that showed Nellie in her late teens. She found the photo of Nellie in her college admission application when she was 16. She found similarities between Nellie that were more than mere coincidence, and the photograph looked similar to a picture she'd had when she was 22. Their hair was the same colour and texture, and appears to be the same thickness, and there were also similarities in the eyes, the cheekbones, the nose, and the shape of the mouth. The photo of Nellie also looked like a paternal grandmother. Was Karen Frazier really the reincarnation of Nellie Sharp, where from a very young age she dreamt about train derailments as well as avalanches? There were also the similarities in their personalities and choice of careers.